entirely, but can't get a chance. The body rolls just proving to be such a menace for players hoping for refreshes.
I don't know if that was a missed shot or just the immunity of the knock body. Either way, he'll be frustrated. But there is still Nathan not relying on that though. Needs to try and deliver some points here in this lobby. Doesn't have too much HP to work with. Trapping flicks, he go down, they lose height. It's Turtle and Asa who take it from them.
And this is exactly the type of game that Asa and Turtle need. This is exactly the type of much else at the start of this lobby. Frozy still forced to drop yet again back to ultimate low. Sad and Pixowski doing what they can to cover their hedge, try and prevent Turtle from continuing to apply that steady pressure here. Winter, though, with a turnaround onto Alba. The Siphon just barely going to keep him up and running, but Pixowski, Saren looking to take full advantage. Chaos that had just ensued here. Asa Turtle still seeming to be the healthiest of the bunch, though.
What are you going to do when the pressure is on and all you have to do is connect the right shots to hit? They will do it. Asa and Turtle, not a doubt. They waited for the perfect moment to strike and they get their win. A well-deserved one as well, Takum.
Look, when it comes to trying to gauge who's actually bringing home the victory royales, things have just been very thrown for a loop in today's competition. But for Asa and Turtle, I mean, obviously, big shout out to the Bear Army there. They're feeling good and primed up heading into Major 2 Grand Finals. Des, what do you have?
Well, I have a lot of respect for this duo because the fights and the end game right now are just looking terrifying. So the duos that manage to hold their nerves and book their spots for next weekend Grand Finals, I would take my hat off to you if I was wearing one. Mini minor, great result for these guys.
Yeah, a really great result, especially since they were way down on the leaderboards going into this game. This is like perfect Heat's gameplay, if you like, because the one game that they were able to actually make it into endgame properly, they took height in a really nice fashion and managed to close out with a win to Carter. That's exactly what you want to see. It was a 44th, 40th, and a 32nd coming up into this game, so nice to see them finally getting a win.
I mean, quite literally had 9 points going into this match, and the good news is, it doesn't matter, because all they need is that win, and it will send them to the major finals. Doing it with 13 eliminations is a good way to go as well, so, I mean, I'm happy to see Turtle and Asa in the finals.
Yeah, and this is a great message and even a warning for all of the duos out there. Anyone can take a victory royale, and most of you need to fight for it like hell because there's only 10 spots and consistency for grabs now. And so many duos are having up and down inconsistent evenings, so everyone needs to go for the top. Let's see if they can do it in just a few minutes.
Ba 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 na na na.
We have a minute left. Boom. Boom. Boom.
There is just one more game to go before we lock in our Heat 3 victors. 5 Victory Royale winners and 10 duos going through on their consistency across the games tonight. So let's take a look at the leaderboard and see where the standings are for these duos. It's going to be particularly tense for so many of the big names. We'll be talking about those in a moment, but you can see that top 4, they're all our Victory Royale winners. So you want to look at 5th and below. And Ping and Ghost, they are the most consistent duo we've had tonight. It's obviously reflected in the numbers, Takata.
Yeah, I mean, they've been comfortably sitting there all day long, and it doesn't look like they're going anywhere but up, especially in this last match. Nice shots connecting through. They got 9th with 4 eliminations, and surprisingly enough, Mini, that's their worst placement today.
Yeah, what they've been able to do really well is just get those placements along with those eliminations, and Ghost has to be the reason for that. The way he's playing today is absolutely unreal, and he's a player that we have to keep our eyes on now when it comes to the major 2 finals, just because, you know, look at their points. They've definitely already qualified through, so it's like, this is a team now that I'm going to be taking a look at, because Ghost is absolutely popping off, playing at the level we know he can really play at. Of course, playing with Tayson last season, couldn't quite reach those, and looking to make yet another major final. It would be his, it is now his 3rd, so really excited to see actually what this duo can do, and seeing whether they can actually perform at this level in the major finals.
And Mini Minor, we can see Chap and Flixie, they've gone up 1 place after game 4, despite Flixie ending up in 10th. They're not necessarily making it to the bitter end games, but they're always picking up eliminations along the way.
Yeah, they are. This is a weird game for them as well, because it looked like it was going to finally be their game. We spoke about them before this game. We were like, yeah, they're making it to the end games. They're doing all right. They're just about limping their way through, and they will, of course, be in the Major 2 finals. And I thought this was going to be their game to actually win and go ahead and take the game. And I want to actually see what exactly happened here, because Chat went back into the storm, I think, to try and maybe get a little bit of extra loot. Flixie then shockwaves on up, and I think they just got height taken off of them. Was it in the back, potentially? Because, of course, it wasn't height for them very much longer, and it was just tough. Yeah, it was that shockwave up there, I think, was it maybe that Alba, of course, put a lot of damage on. But for these guys, yeah, there you go, getting shot down, that was the reason why they lost height. But for these guys, they've qualified through Takata. Excited to see what they can do, because they're such a great duo.
Yeah, it's interesting because they've only been in the top 10 one match. It was 7th place on the first game of the day. Since then, 17th, 11th, 10th. Like, they're good placements. It's enough to put you in qualifying range through consistency. Cutoff is currently 125 points. It will be top 15 once we we'll finish this last match of the day. So they're doing good, but I need to see them get a top 5.
Oh, but Takata, let's face it, this is Chap and Flixie. They're going to be W-keying the lobby in this final game. They're fairly comfortable on points, as you guys have just stated. Now they're going to be hungry for height. They're going to be hungry for, like, placing finally within that top 3. I want to see them in that final fight, Takata. Are we going to see it? Promise me this.
I'd say so. I'd say so. I mean, they're going to play all or nothing for this last match of the day, whereas on the contrary, there's a lot of players who are kind of outside of that qualifying range, or maybe just on the cutoff, and those are the players who are going to be feeling the pressure, the ones that have to make this last match count.
Well, if we bring up the leaderboard, we'll see Nathan and Nebs. They are on page 1 of the leaderboard right now, and this is a duo, to be honest, that have performed under all of our expectations. We've basically all said this individually on the broadcast tonight. We know that they deserve to be in the grand finals. We just want them to pull out an all guns blazing display, Mini Minor.
Yeah, I think realistically should just about be qualified through, but it was a really important game for them, this one, actually, here in game 4, because they did have that wobble in game 3 where they got a 24th with not a single elimination. So it was actually good to see them back together in endgame Takata, which is where they operate best. And even Nebs there hitting a good few shots, unfortunately getting dropped down there at the end, but just about doing enough here to realistically already qualify them through. But they just want to bolster that here in the last game.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because these are one of the favorites going into today, uncontested, dead center of the map, looking primed up from the play-ins, and I mean, they're in qualifying range, but we did expect a bit more from them, so we'll see if they can finish strong in the last match.
We'll take a look at the qualifying range now on page 2 of the leaderboard. Remember, guys, we are looking at the top 4 of this page. If you're 15th and below, you're currently not in contention, but obviously everything can change after this next game. So Pix and Farron and Tiddy and Hool, they are currently on the threshold to Carter. These are 2 teams that can pull a big game out of the bag.
Yeah, there's just so many names. Almost surprised Comeback, Seti in 17th, Fear and Pix. I mean, Ifrazi, Giros, Cheatin. There's just so many names who are outside of qualifying range right now, and some who are also barely in. iDrop Gonzo, Hellfire Winther. It's just a little bit too much pressure for these teams with only 1 match left to make it happen. So taking a look at Hellfire and Winther, though, they have been getting a lot of eliminations throughout these matches, especially the most recent one with a second place 7 elim finish, Mini.
Yeah, they're not quite in, though. They're not quite in. I wouldn't say 140 points is home and dry quite yet, so they're still going to need a big performance here. Of course, we all know about Hellfire being playing at the top of his game for so long, and nice to see him, of course, still performing at this level as well. I was looking at Seti there as well in Comeback. They had a really good start to the day, remember? I think it was a 3rd place they had in their very first game, and they've just tapered off throughout the rest of the day, and I think now it's finally starting to set in that it's now or never for them. They need to get back into that top 15, because remember, they've had an uncontested drop spot all day, so to be honest, there's no excuses.
And there's no excuses if you do not make it to the Major 2 finals for all of these duos, if you want to make it to Antwerp for the Global Championship. Yes, we had the last chance lobby, 5 spots up for grabs on Tuesday, but then if you don't make it to Grand Finals, take one of those 9 spots to Antwerp, you're going to have to go for the last chance qualifier in August, and there's only a 1/3 of the spots up for grabs. That's 3 places. Major 2 finals you have to make if you want to have a chance at being a global champion. That is on the minds of all of our duos as we go into this 5th and final game of Heat 3.
Frankie set the stakes perfectly. You have to make it count now. A lot of players in this lobby still would have been hoping to have picked one of those tickets up early in the day, but you still have game number 5 to make it happen, Taco.
Yeah, and what's even crazier still to factor in too is just knowing that, sure, we've got a handful of teams that have definitely secured their position when it comes to the placement points, but I would say starting right around where Nebs and Nathan are hovering, 156 points, all the way down to around 22nd place of 82. It's all realistically within overtaking range of each other. There are a lot of players who still potentially have a little bit of a chance. It's small, but as long as it's there, everyone's going to be fighting for it, and we'll get to see who actually makes it here in Game 5.
Game number 5.
Sort of continuing that initial talking point, it's just understanding that, sure, while the difference between 82 points and 156 might seem steep, it's still just enough that players are going to have to really try and do everything in their power. Whatever's left over in the tank, every last little bit of gas, you've just got to stomp on the pedal and try to really skyrocket yourself forward into the best possible position. And for other teams, it's all or nothing. They don't have the luxury of choosing. Their only hopes of making it to the Major 2 Grand Finals outside of the Last Chance lobby is just going to be a win and you're in situation. Players that have been fighting at Latte Land and such all day long. No one really coming out on top for it. Even if they have been able to convert off-spawn wins, it's usually immediately shut down by third-party endeavors. This time it'll feature Seti and Comeback. Again, the panic isn't there just yet, but Seti and Comeback know what's at stake. They are currently sitting outside of that placement.
Yeah, a little bit of damage there. The fight before that, inconsequential, right? 2 bottom 5 teams cannibalizing each other. That is the nature of these Heat games. But for Seti and Comeback, that damage gives them a start in this game. A start which will be a journey towards a win.
Really just thinking about Seti and Comeback right now, since they're already a bit movement of the map. They might even have the chance to third party yet again. What's taking place here between more teams that are currently on that bottom 25 half of the leaderboard. And for Noah and Seisher, it seems like they were able to get the win over Shakos and Artskill. But it'll still be tough to try and escape the likes of Seti and Comeback.
This is big. We've not seen much of Izzy and Nosif today, but they've been a team hovering around the edge of qualification. And just like that, Izzy and Nosif's hopes and dreams were aligned on the last chance qualifier. Unfortunately for them, we shunned the light on them a bit too late. They struggled to deal with it. And so that is going to be the end of the road there for them. Chap and Flixie. We've spoken a lot about their struggles. I don't think they're going to struggle though if they're going up against KC based on some of the stats I was given last game. Noodle might have something to say though. Or maybe not.
Unfortunately, Noodle also getting pressured from elsewhere. And those additional little beams being sent from Tozio were more than enough to continue. Chap and Flixie's a little bit of aggression there. Kind of sunk Noodle along the way. But yeah, Chap Flixie, it hasn't been, you know, a lights out performance by any means today, but it's at least been enough to where they are in a relatively safe position for the contention in terms of placement. It'd be great to see them close things out with the Victory Royale. We know that they've got the potential for it, but if we're going to follow today's narrative in terms of how their day has gone, it's very likely just going to be solid movements throughout the end game. It's just going to translate into additional points.
Hutty and Fishy, I'm still holding on to the dream. I want to see them get a win.
At least one of the two.
At least one. Look, Zarb and Wolvax, they're qualified. They're good. They will make it on consistency. Whether or not they want to leave the lobby with one win will depend on them, really, based on how they've been playing. They're going to be running at anybody trying to disrupt people's opportunities. Alba and Xenox coming into this game sat in 23rd. Not the closest to being able to qualify, but still not impossible. A really good game could do it if they can muster one up. But again, when you have Wolvax and Zarb running at you like this, it does complicate things a tad bit.
To be fair, that did come back to bite him in the last lobby, since Xenox was able to clutch up against Zarb and Wolvax. It's a big part of the reason why they had that huge comeback in Game 4. And, well, unfortunately for Hutty and Fishy, it seems like their departure from Wonky Land has sent them directly towards Chap and Flixie's area. Is now Chap Flixie can kind of fight things through. There is another duo, Carlos and Morles, who have unfortunately gotten involved. Whether or not they necessarily wanted to be here is a different story entirely, but for Chap and Flixie, they won't have any problems whatsoever taking down yet another duo in this lobby. Honey Fishy have managed to escape down towards the tunnel, so be safe for the time being.
Nebs and Nathan, another one of those teams that again starting to pick the pace up a bit and they're in a good position to be able to qualify. A good last game would not hurt. A win wouldn't hurt. No, I'm with you. I want to see them get a dub.
Especially when you factor in that, you know, we're looking at teams in their divisional cup performances, right? That's one of the leading metrics for where you like to factor how a duo might perform in their given heats. And you have to remember, Nebs and Nathan, one of the few duos that have actually managed to secure 3 Victory Royales in a singular Div Cup finals. So you would almost expect that a Victory Royale in the heats lobby is just a given, and yet today's competition clearly showcasing that there is plenty of talent on the EU region that is all looking to get their hands on that same win condition.
This is a team a lot of people will want to be watching in this final game just because of how many people will be rooting for them. Mr. Savage and Truly struggles all throughout today. And the pressure are mounting on a Game 5 win for them most likely, with the best team on the day currently lurking around them. Does not bode well.
Most definitely a make or break situation, and a circumstance that this could also just wind up being the ultimate catalyst though for Savage and Truly. Should King and Ghost continue to try and pursue this fight, and if Savage and Truly were able to come out on the better end of it, that would certainly have to be the ultimate confidence metric to carry them through into a solid endgame performance, because they just need one. Realistically speaking, looking at some of these teams that are currently in competition for that top placement metric, most of them have had just 1 or 2 solid games on the day, and the rest a little bit more towards the dudded section. But that just goes to show that a very strong performance in the final hour could be the actual difference maker between last chance lobby or already having your seat on the battle bus for the Major 2 Grand Finals.
Yeah, it's always very fine margins, isn't it? And I know for the players, you replay those moments over and over again in your mind. Chap and Flixie find themselves in the midst of a battle between them and Nebs and Nathan. Neither team really comes out of this positively.
A bit more of a net negative though for Flixie and Chap. Anytime you see a party that's kind of waiting for an item to fill it out. But for Chap and Flixie, the start of this game, they were able to get rather aggressive. I mean, Chap with 3 eliminations as is. And yet, still trying to see whether or not they can get some more out of it. Alvin and Brutus, a duo that needs to avoid falling at this stage. Their hopes clinging onto whether or not they can actually overcome Chap and Flixie in this current fight, or at least draw it out long enough to maybe discourage them from wanting to continue it. But they've got nothing to lose. Even if they fall now, it won't really make much of a difference in terms of how their day has already been going. And for Flixie, they'll find that first elimination. Alvin now just hiding, out of sight, out of mind, hoping that Chap and Flixie will be content with at least one of the two, and it does seem to be the case.
They're not the only ones getting involved in action though. Fishy and Hutty been active in the field, and this is exactly what's been taking place. I mean, yeah, if you're running that Fishy, he's gonna be ready for you.
You know, they always say you want to pick your fights carefully. And unfortunately for some players in this lobby, you're not going to necessarily know right away of who exactly it is you're trying to go toe-to-toe with, but without a doubt, Fishy got to be one of the worst players to actually encounter, especially in a Game 5 circumstance. Because there are no other opportunities in today's competition. It is going to be last chance lobby or bust.
Yeah, just to clarify before someone clips you out of context, worse because he's good.
Yes.
It was about saying.
biggest part of the reason why Chuck and Ifrozi are trying to avoid this fight is because they're dealing with a team that's got nothing to lose. They're playing only for the win. Bimbo and Radeon have absolutely exhausted themselves when it comes to most of their material count in this fight, but they are just playing for that Hail Mary takeaway. They're trying to see if they can shut down Chuck and Ifrozi, who, sure, they might be hovering just outside the placement range, but it's a very difficult spot to be in when you know that you've got a duo challenging you that is clearly desperate. And for Bimbo and Radeon, the main reason why they wanted that fight so badly is just because they know that they need every bit of elimination points they can get, just in case they wind up with the top 3 positioning. You never know if you just barely might manage to crawl your way into that bottom spot for placements, but more likely than not, they just want to clear out some space, try and make sure that they are one of the last duos fighting for that victory royale.
Champion fixing going down there. And that isn't optimal. It means it'll be a bit of a nail biter, but I think they should be good based off of previous days' qualifications. So now the eyes switch focus to some of the other teams. We just had Fuzzy and ADN on our screens there. You can see it on the bottom of our screens. ADN had 6 limbs last game. So the coach now is doing everything in his power to make sure he can play in next weekend's finals. What happens with all the teams he's coaching if he's
next week
for his own grands? Who knows? Fuzzy maybe will handle the prep for him. If you're not familiar with Fuzzy, he has the most noble scrim games in 2025 and 2024 back to back. He's a grinder. He plays and practices more than anybody else, and that practice is coming in handy because he might get the better hand of some of his Norwegian counterparts here. iDrop and Gonzo still need to do a bit more here to solidify themselves a qualification spot. I think most people are expecting them to do it, but the job isn't done. And there's some very hungry teams like Canadian and Fuzzy looking to do it ahead of them, and currently running in a storm ahead of them.
For Nathan and Nebs, they'll just have to sit and wait and stare at that leaderboard and hope that they have done enough, because encountering Bimbo and Radeon, who have just been a little bit more reckless with how they're trying to measure up in these fights. Nathan did a great job initially, but ultimately winds up working against them. Just any sort of pauses that prevent you from making it into a more solid position inside the zone, it's just going to leave you susceptible to the rest of the lobby, sort of focusing in on your position. And right now, Hellfire, Winther, after Winther soloing so many placement points in that last lobby, along with those eliminations, it has put them in a very good spot for contention here, but they're going to have to replicate it. Ideally, though, not with Winther as a solo, but instead alongside Hellfire.
Yeah, and Winther and Hellfire in a great spot. Some of the players ahead of them, like Chap and Flixie, Nebs and Nathan, some of the players who maybe could have caused them issues have been going down. Fuzzy has lost ADN, so ADN came in with the goods. Fuzzy cannot return the favor. They were 4, and just like that, their hopes of the FNCS final rely on next week's last chance qualifier.
So next week.
Still, the amount of points that they were able to grab is right on par with where SETI and Combat currently sit. And this is exactly why SETI was kind of just trying to monitor what was taking place towards that backside of the zone, just in a slightly better position. He's going to be the shutdown factor there for ADN and for his hopes. And for Hellfire and Winther, we had just mentioned wanting to see them make it towards that end game performance, but as a duo. And now we'll get the other end of that. Hellfire this time as a solo, though. It's a rough